Good morning, everybody. Great to see so many people here this morning. We're just waiting for others just to enter the room. We'll be starting shortly. It's great to see so many people prompt on a Thursday morning. Obviously, quite a few doing the school run this morning. Just waiting for the last couple of people to enter the room. Fantastic. We might get started. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Dave Walsh. On behalf of the ERF, I'm delighted to welcome you all here to the August ERF breakfast briefing on how to get the recruiter edge. Today, we're focusing on crafting your legacy and how to develop your personal brand, what that means for us as recruiters. We have a fantastic panel of experts with us this morning, and I'll introduce them shortly. But before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things. Firstly, a big thanks as always to ContractingPLUS, who make these breakfast briefings possible for you to attend with their generous sponsorship. ContractingPLUS are key partners for many of our members in contract recruitment. They are contracting experts and support your team in getting new candidates set up into umbrella and limited companies so they can sign contracts the same day. If you are in contract recruitment, make sure to give Jen or Jimmy a shout, and I'm sure one or both of them are going to be on the meeting this morning. So firstly, before we get stuck in, just a couple of other housekeeping things. Please feel free to introduce yourself, and I see some people are already doing that on the chat function, which is fantastic. But may I ask that you keep your questions to the panel in the Q&A box? It's just much easier for us to keep control of them that way and be able to allocate the questions. As we've established over the last couple of years with COVID, the strength of these events are really on the questions and the interaction with you, our delegates. So please feel free to ask any question you'd like to our expert panel. It's not often that we have such a strong panel on recruitment and recruitment marketing present. So really, really excited to go through some things there. So while I introduce the panel, we'd like to get a base understanding of your knowledge in this area. So I think Anna is just going to pop up a quick poll. And just to get your understanding of how do you feel about personal brand and what your personal brand means in recruitment. So while you answer those, I'm delighted to introduce our expert panel. So first up, we have Connor Byrne. Connor is from the That's What I Call Marketing podcast. He's a podcast host and fractional CMO. He's an award-winning marketeer with over 20 years of international experience in B2C and B2B marketing. He's delivered world-class marketing strategies that drive future demand and growth for leading brands such as Indeed, Full Tilt, Standard Life, Pepperami, Bank of Ireland. He's worked on the client and agency side in the UK, Europe, Asia Pac, Latin America. He's been awarded a number of awards, including the Golden Effie for B2B. In March 2022, he started the podcast That's What I Call Marketing, where he interviews the best marketeers in the world and shares their insights and learnings with marketing professionals. He also leverages his best-in-class agency and client-side experience to help organizations accelerate their marketing function. His core skills include integrated marketing strategy, global marketing strategy development, high-performance team building, performance marketing, product marketing, shareholder engagement, partnerships, and B2B marketing. So we're delighted to get some insights from Connor shortly. Next up, we've got Maria Weaver from FRS Recruitment. She's the recruitment manager in business support. Maria is a passionate and energetic recruitment manager with strong experience in recruitment. She's currently managing the FRS Recruitment Business Support Team and specialisms of admin, customer service, insurance, HR, talent acquisition, and marketing. She's currently working on roles across all the insurance sector, and she's got some great lived experience in developing your personal brand and marketing for us today. And finally, last but not least, we've got Emer Welch from Alternatives, who's the managing partner. She's the managing partner of Alternatives, who is part of the Brightwater Group. She leads a dynamic team of experts in providing flexible marketing and digital talent solutions, driving the growth of their clients across the business sector. She's got over 15 years experience in the recruitment industry and a strong track record in delivering effective, efficient, and bespoke services to candidates and clients, ranging from contractors and interim marketing professionals to executive search. She's also the director of Mentors Ireland, where they offer best-in-class business mentoring, advisory and consulting, and executive coach to senior leaders. Emer also has the challenge of marketing recruitment to marketing professionals. So I'm really excited to hear some of her feedback and advice on this one earlier on. So Anna, I think we've finished the panel there. So in order, as a recruiter, how do you feel about your personal brand rates? So personal what is 5%. I don't know where to start, need help, which is 26%. So glad to say I think today is going to be an answer to a lot of those questions. It's okay, but could be better, 65%. And then 3 people or 5% see themselves as rock star personal brand status. So good on them. We expect to see some great questions from those guys throughout the day. So firstly, I'd like to just start off with Connor. Connor, what is a personal brand? What does it mean, and how can you affect it?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, look, I think maybe just to put it in the context of the principles of brand building, because they just apply to personal brand anyway. And like if you think about it from any of the organizations you work with, like their brands are one of their most valuable assets. So your brand is definitely one of your most valuable assets. And for brand building to work, you really need to kind of think about a few things. And one of them is, how you kind of convey or evoke associations and memories with you and what you are doing. And the reason for that is because, look, we all know attention is really, really difficult. I mean, there's lots of research in marketing that say people are spending between 2 and 3 seconds of attention on any piece of content that they're exposed to. So brands that are chosen really need to be chosen because they have that, what we call mental availability. And mental availability really is the concept of your brand coming to mind when your customers are in, from a marketing perspective, different buying situations within a category. So for your personal brand, you're really thinking about how you are coming to mind when people you're trying to engage with are, in a situation thinking about their job search or whatever that is. And then maybe 2 other things to think about when you're thinking about brand building and your personal brand are really concepts of kind of distinctiveness and differentiation. So they're really important concepts when you think about brand building. Brand building around kind of differentiation is how you think about your unique selling proposition. So, the reasons for people to choose you over others. So whether it's your personal expertise, your experience, or the niche kind of area of the market that you serve. And the distinctiveness is about how you stand out from the competition. And for personal branding, that's really kind of about what makes you look and sound different and really distinct. And some of that can be in, how you show up in terms of, the colors you choose, the formats that you put stuff out into. Like even from my perspective, when I was launching the podcast, I thought long and hard about the name. I thought long and hard about the color scheme. I thought long and hard about the things that stand out, because when I looked at other marketing podcasts, there was a lot of blue, and there was a lot of that kind of, you go in, it's hard to stand out. So how do you find something that communicates what you want to get across, but does it in a way that when it stands out in the noise? Because again, just thinking about that attention piece is so important. People are paying 2 to 3 seconds of attention for a piece of content. So you have to really think about, how your brand is going to stand out. So that's kind of some of the principles. There's loads of principles that we'll get into of brand building. Yeah. For me, they're kind of really core principles for people to think about.
Fantastic. Thanks, Connor. And Emer, in terms of recruitment, what does that mean for us as recruiters, stroke marketeers? Because I think it's hard to you can't differentiate recruitment and marketing anymore. But what does that mean for us as recruitment consultants in this very, very busy and highly competitive market?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would fully agree. I think when I started in recruitment, sorry,
we can hear you
there. I'm back. When I started in recruitment, it was all about sales. That's we were getting into a sales job, and I think the lines between selling and marketing are completely blurred now. And I suppose you have the whole concept of social selling, which we'll talk about later on. But as a recruiter, I think you have to get your marketing right. And that's all about building your personal brand. And it's exactly what you've mentioned there, Connor, I think, in terms about that 2-3 second piece. How do you grab the attention of the candidates and the clients that, your competitors are also trying to attract? And it is about that distinction, the differentiation. So I think first things first, it's, define your niche. What, you could be a generalist recruiter, but do you specialize in a particular jurisdiction or location? I suppose within alternatives, we're very specialist. We work in marketing. We know what we do. It's marketing, comms, digital. That's our specialty. And it's about becoming an expert in that space. Not becoming a marketing expert, because that's what the candidates are, but becoming an expert in recruiting them and kind of how their market works. And I suppose we have a phrase internally across the Brightwater Group. It's all about inch wide, miles deep. Being that real specialist, and I suppose then sharing that information with your followers and building that unique brand. So it's all about the content you're sharing, the posts you're engaging with online, even the basic stuff for those people who don't know where to start is actually, how do you optimize your LinkedIn profile? What do you have in your summary? Is it listing you're doing finance recruitment, marketing recruitment, whatever it is? So it's those basic things to start out with.
Fantastic. And the content itself that you share, you don't need to be the author of that. Would that be fair, or should you be the author of those kind of things?
No, Connor, do you want to maybe, as the expert, comment on that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting to thought leadership is great, but actually probably the starting point, if someone is, again, think about some of the people that I don't necessarily know where to start. I think some of it is starting to comment and add your perspective to other people's content, because I think what that does is it starts to help you find your voice and starts to help you think about the areas that you are kind of passionate about and that you have a point of view on, because over time, even over kind of 4 or 6 weeks, you start to really pick out the things that, when I see these, let's say, posts on LinkedIn and I add a comment, I get really engaged with that, and I kind of enjoying that, and then all of a sudden that is kind of starting to carve out a space for you that you're passionate about, because I think that's really important. It doesn't work if you don't have a passion for it, because it's going to seem like a load of work for you. Whereas if you're finding things you really enjoy, that you are passionate about, it's going to just feel like part of something that you really enjoy every day, right? And that's really important. So I think that's a great starting point, is just even starting adding comments and finding your voice.
Maria, you've obviously got a fantastic online presence. Is that something that you allocate time for each day, or is it just how did you start building up that, and how do you start using various channels to communicate and to differentiate yourself?
It is something that I consciously work on, all right, in relation to trying to get to the network that I want to be able to talk to. So when I'm putting information out there, I need to make sure that I'm putting out information that I think my network will be interested in and share as well, so that my network continues to grow. You don't have to put a huge amount of time into it, though. You really only have to go in maybe 2, 3 times a week. If you do 10, 15 minutes, it doesn't have to take a huge amount of your time. No but we problem. Also work with our marketing team in FRS Recruitment. We have a brilliant marketing team, and they will help you in your own company. Use the marketing team to help you with the branding, to help you with some content sometimes. And it's not just yourself. You don't have to be the individual. Get support as well.
Brilliant. One of the challenges that a lot of us face is that we might work for a firm that's associated with one particular industry or one particular vertical. How do you articulate your message? Or Connor, how would you recommend you can articulate what you do when it's almost in conflict with your mother brand as such?
Yeah, and look, probably a good example is when I was at Indeed, and Indeed is obviously known as a job search platform, and I was looking to kind of have my own personal brand around marketing, and Indeed probably wasn't known as a marketing organization, but actually was a huge marketing team. And so what I tried to do was kind of find my voice within that, right, and trying to relate then what I was talking about to marketing with my experiences at Indeed and what we were doing, for example, in global marketing. And so it was trying to find my voice within kind of what the organization was doing and make it relatable to that. Because I think if you align very, very closely with the purely what the organization does, it can be difficult for you to find your voice within that. So again, it goes back to that. I was passionate about marketing, and I wanted to be able to relate the things that I was doing is, how do you scale a brand in India and Australia? Like, how do you talk about that and find other people you can have conversations with? And then it all related to Indeed, because I was able to naturally then talk about what we were doing in Indeed from a marketing perspective.
Again, the question and answer section or box is open there, so please feel free if you have any questions about this topic that you'd like to share with any of the members of our panel, just drop them in there. Emer, one of the things that really intrigued me about yourself from our chats beforehand was how you not only had to market to marketeers, but you've also had to reinvent yourself as a marketing recruiter, because I think your background was more in financial recruitment.
Yeah.
How did you do that, or what step? Like, because that would be quite a daunting journey. What did you do? What was the first kind of steps that you took in terms of repositioning yourself on the market, or how people perceived you?
Yeah, so I suppose it was almost like starting again in some ways. I mean, I was lucky I had kind of 14, 15 years recruitment experience. So I suppose, you don't lose that. You're still a recruitment expert, but it is a different sort of sector that you're looking to specialize in. So it's really working with your candidates, your clients, just kind of, as Connor said, being passionate about the topic, wanting to learn about it. I suppose the great thing about marketing candidates and clients is they are online. There's a huge digital presence there, so they're maybe easy to get to. But it was really, and I suppose, listen, it's only in the last couple of years that I think me as a recruiter have really focused on building my personal brand, and I suppose have seen real success from doing that. So kind of back to Maria's point, it was all about kind of, consistently just putting ourselves out there, sharing content that was relevant to those individuals. I suppose really looking at, and it's not just digital, I suppose, I think we chatted about this previously as well. It's not just about building your presence online. The old school networking, in-person events are also really, really key. So alternatives, we're lucky enough to partner with the likes of the Marketing Institute. So we've really kind of forged that relationship with the guys, going to events with them, getting speaking slots at some of their events. And I suppose, again, it was back to that phrase of being authentic to what I am good at. I'm not a marketeer. I'm a recruiter. So when you're going to those events, it's talking about interview tips and tricks, adding value where I can. I'm not going to tell you how to create a digital marketing strategy, because that's not my expertise. Now, I've learned a huge amount from interviewing candidates over the last couple of years, but it's about what value I can add. And I think that's the one thing as recruiters, when you're trying to come up with content, we are in a really sort of niche industry where you're talking to candidates, you're talking to clients from all sorts of different businesses. We're actually privy to a huge amount of insights and data that the ordinary, Joe Soap may not be. So it's really about just even, you might be on a call with a client, there could be something really interesting that some organization is doing. It's just sharing a little piece of that. It doesn't have to be an essay. It's just a little couple of lines. I know I had a post recently following on from kind of a group of CMO interviews that we had, just on sort of tips and tricks where people did well or people didn't do well. And it got great engagement because it was just interesting to everybody, just normal, interesting stories that as recruiters, we have loads of to share.
Fantastic. Maria, is there any kind of ratio that you work off in terms of posts on LinkedIn or on other social channels? I think would you have, for every one job post you might have 5 pieces of content, or are you as prescriptive as that?
No, I'm not as prescriptive as that, but I do have as few job posts as possible compared to other posts, because nobody wants to see just reams and reams and reams of job posts. You will lose your audience as a recruiter if you keep doing that. What I find is even going out on whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram, the actual personal posts, they gain so much traction because you could have a personal win or something, and you can relate that back to the work that you're doing, and they get really loads of traction. So it's about being yourself and being authentic online and in person as well. As Emo was saying, it's absolutely fantastic that the in-person networking events are back open again, and there's nothing like getting out there and meeting with people.
Would you have the same kind of content or the same posts across those different social channels? Would you post the same post on Instagram as you would on LinkedIn, as you would on Twitter?
No, my selfies would be on Instagram. They wouldn't be on LinkedIn, no. But just going back to what Emer was saying there as well about being able to pivot, a good recruiter really will be able to pivot into many different areas. In where we are in business support, where we've turned into generalists for the minute, just in relation to the way the market is, and we're able to work across all different sections of business support, which I suppose in terms of finding your niche, that kind of broadens that a little bit and is kind of going completely against and what Emer was saying in relation to inch wide and mile deep, but it's just the way that the market is, that we just have to pivot that way. So being able to showcase any wins as a recruiter, at the end of the day, that's what we are. We are recruiters, not administrators or office managers or HR.
Brilliant. One of the things kind of strikes me on this is that obviously a planned and tactical campaign across social channels is really important. From a recruitment point of view, and I do counter this with the fact I know you're the one non-recruiter on the call, but have you got any advice on how we can measure it? How do we can measure its efficiency? How do we measure its effectiveness? What are the kind of rules that we should impose on ourselves? Because it's very easy to click on to Twitter, showing my age again here, and next thing you know, it's the next day. I will never not call it Twitter, by the way. Sorry, just...
Yeah, let's not get into that whole branding discussion. I study the same thing. So I think one of the things actually is we can get very fixated on followers, right? And I do it. I'm like, followers and checking that and looking at that. But it's actually looking at how the community you have are engaging with what you're doing and saying. And so that is more important, because that gives you a sense of the content that you're putting out is of value, right? And it's like, would you rather have 100 people that are engaged with what you're saying, or 10,000 people that don't really care? And so actually that's kind of been a real shift away from, that kind of chasing the followers. Like when all the social started, it was all about the likes. Remember that? We were all like, how many people like it? And then it was like, well, how many people follow it? And now it is moving into more of the engaged side of things. So, yes, look at reach, but look at the people that are engaging with your content. And then that'll help you figure out some of the stuff. And look, some of the stuff can be really hard. Like you can put something out one week and you look, let's say on LinkedIn, and you look and your organic reach is terrible and nothing happens on it. You put something very similar out the following week and you get incredible reach and engagement, and you're like, you don't know what happened there. And sometimes it's hard to figure out, but then sometimes actually, maybe to Maria, your point, some of the stuff actually that is being put out is where you create that emotional connection. And you were talking about that, Emer, as well. It's like, that's actually what people, it's almost that honesty. And sometimes we can be a bit afraid to do it. And so, yeah, look, I guess with that stuff tested as well. But I think there are some of the things to look at. So I wouldn't, particularly if you're starting out, I wouldn't be worried about like, oh, I don't have enough followers, right? Just, look at the stuff that you're putting out. Are people engaging with it? That's more important.
Emer, have you anything that you specific? Oh, sorry, Maria, go on.
Well, I was just going to say on the flip side of that, it's also important for us to engage with the people that you make connections with. So recruiters are out there trying to build connections on LinkedIn, and that's important, yes. But then don't just leave them there as connections. Talk to them, comment, find where there are synergies between you and your network, and those people are potentially candidates and clients, and that's how you get their respect, and you get them coming to you then, basically.
Fantastic. Emer, have you any specific metrics that you put around the campaign, or how you try and track it, or have you, when you start for a role, if you were to try and promote an opportunity or do some sourcing, have you got any specific metrics that you'd put around a campaign, or how does that work?
Yeah, like there's all sorts of tools that you can use, I suppose, to measure success. As an overall company group, we work and partner really closely with LinkedIn and have regular quarterly meetings with them in terms of how our jobs are performing. And as a group, we are doing really, really well. I think we grew our followership over 100K in followers over the last sort of 12 months or 18 months, which is phenomenal. And we're definitely kind of tracking ahead of some of our competitors. So it's great to get that kind of more high level feedback from LinkedIn as a group. And I think that isn't just company brand, that is down to the success of each and every one of the consultants, all pushing out their personal brands. But I suppose to take it back even a track, because I suppose if, like me, I suppose more mature recruiters, we're not digital natives. You've got the Gen Z who've grown up, they're using social media in all of their personal lives as kids. Do you know what I mean? So it's not a big move to then kind of bring your professional brand online. I think maybe for those of us that don't use social media really in our personal lives, it seems like a real arduous task to suddenly be trying to get a bit of your personality as well as and there's that blurred line of how personal do I get, or do I keep it very professional? And that's something I think we do need to be really conscious of. I don't know if any of you are watching the new show on Netflix. It's $1 Million Listings. I often compare real estate and recruitment. Similar in some ways, maybe not as glamorous. But he has a group of new age consultants who do all their selling through social media, and they've had huge success. But equally, they went on a podcast and completely slated their colleagues, and he ended up having to let one of them go, not to give away any sort of story there. But it was just sort of an example of that fine line of, you know, you need to keep it professional. You need to have sort of, I suppose, your company values, your culture, your own personal values, but you do need to give a little bit of yourself into it. Sorry, I've completely digressed in terms of the metrics, but it was just something that from Connor said there that kind of popped into my head.
No, that's brilliant. I think the word authenticity and yourself is just, it's coming through from the three of you really as a core pillar of brand building. And with that in mind, Connor, we're all agreed that this is a really important thing. It is where the market is at the moment, and it is what we as recruiters need to invest in. What are the core kind of principles in brand building?
Well, I mean, yeah, some of the the things I was touching on earlier on, in terms of, that concept of mental availability, making sure you are kind of top of mind, differentiation, distinctiveness, they're all really, core foundational elements of brand building. And like really they're probably, particularly kind of how you're distinctive and differentiating yourself are really important to kind of think about. And again, going back to that earlier point about, even if you're just writing comments on something, that starts helping you build that out. And the other thing to think about as well is a concept called future demand. And we often think about, from a marketing perspective, the idea of everybody's in market now. And actually a huge proportion of people are not in market right now. And that's very true, I think, for, in recruitment as well. Although people say they're not in market, they normally are. But that idea of future demand, so that really kind of helps you think about the importance of brand building for long-term growth and your own personal long-term brand building. So you need to invest in those activities over time, because a lot of the people that you're trying to engage with will maybe not be in market right now. But if you're creating this personal brand and this voice, it means the time that they come into market, you are going to be top of mind for them. And that's really important. And we think very immediately in marketing, there's the concept of, long and short term, right? And a lot of marketing is all about short term. What are we doing now today for the revenue? But we often struggle to think about the long term. Brand building is a long-term activity. It is not something that pays off in this quarter, next quarter. It takes time. The good brands are built up over time. And actually what we see in brand building as well is, when people pull back from it. So if you kind of are building a brand over time, and then as often happens in marketing organizations, the budgets get hit and it's the brand building that gets pulled first. And actually that has a massive impact on the short-term effects, because, the short-term performance marketing stuff stops working. So it's a long-term play, and it's really important to think about that and the principles of future demand, and thinking about the people that aren't in market now. By you building your brand, you're going to be top of mind when they're in market.
What obviously AI has become a significant contributor to saving us a lot of time in the recruitment sphere at the moment. Maria, what kind of AI tools would you recommend, or do you use for content creation and brand building?
Yeah, we're using ChatGPT for a couple of different things. We're actually, just to take it back into recruitment for a second, but we're using that for if you have a niche or a specialism role, we would put the job spec into ChatGPT and ask us to give us back interview questions on it. And that will help us in terms of talking to candidates and also preparing them for interview. It's a great tool. It's a really good tool, but you really do often have to look at the language of it as well. But yes, if there's something in particular that I wanted to have a conversation about online, I can throw throw out a topic to ChatGPT and ask it to give me back some of the key points in relation to that particular topic. And whatever I find interesting out of that, then that's what I'll put up online and see what other people's thoughts are.
Emer, is there anything else you use, or what tools would you use?
No, like, I mean, we'd use ChatGPT, we use Google Gemini, kind of, anything like that for building content is great. But like that, it's all about trying to personalize it back to what it is you do want to, I suppose, talk about. I think that whole future demand thing is actually really interesting, Connor, because I mean, when you think about it, in our line of work, it is, yes, the candidates might. I think the candidates that are in the market are applying to the jobs. You kind of have them already. It's the candidates or clients that you want in the future. So I think it's a very slowly process when you're building your brand, but it's very relevant to us in terms of trying to capture those candidates that are going to come on the market again, and equally those candidates maybe that you've placed that may then turn into clients as well, which often happens. I think that's the whole piece of sort of social selling. I suppose the whole concept is that buyers now have access to so much more information. They're going to do their research online. They're not just going to, go with the first thing that they see. So I think that it's all about having that expertise, that credibility built up over time. So when somebody is ready to actually apply for a job or get in touch, they will come to you.
And I think that's something that we've seen happen a lot recently in terms of personal branding, and it evolves into, I suppose, one of the big aspects of it then will be thought leadership, which is something that we're hearing more and more of. And organizations who choose to partner with certain recruiters is because they perceive them to be thought leaders in that space. Likewise, individual recruiters. Like, what can you just take it back a couple of stages, Connor? What is thought leadership, and how is that something that we should aspire towards as individual recruiters, or like, where is it going, or how can we affect ourselves in that sector?
Yeah, look, I think thought leadership is probably, as you say, it's kind of aspirational, like to get there, right? I think it's it takes time to be considered a thought leader, and there's just probably from the marketing world an example of a guy that I follow who's kind of almost become a thought leader, and so there's a company called System One that's very well known for testing marketing ads, and there's a guy that joined them probably about 2, maybe 3 years ago called Andrew Tyndall. And Andrew, he was actually on the Junior Apprentice years ago, right? Anyway, so that's an aside. But Andrew kind of has, again, built up over time. He started by commenting on things. And then over time, Andrew has got to the point where he posts daily on LinkedIn. I'm not saying this is what people have to do, but this is just an example of what he's done. He posts daily on LinkedIn on marketing, on topics in marketing. If he sees like an ad on his way to work, he takes a picture of it and he writes a long post on why it's a good ad, and he kind of breaks it down. And so he's become a thought leader. But again, he's built it up over time. He's become a really well-considered thought leader, and he then leans into what the organization do, and he's able to refer to some of the testing principles that they have and some of the research that they have. So kind of, it does take time, but he's kind of a very clear voice and thought leader in the space of kind of, emotional advertising and what works in the advertising sphere. So yeah, I think it's building up to that again, because you find the things that you enjoy talking about, then it becomes easy to become the thought leader and lean into, as we mentioned before, lean into research or other information that either your organization have, or the federation have, or other bodies have, because it doesn't all have to be yours, right? You just then have a point of view on it. So like one of the things I've started doing this year is a monthly marketing newsletter on LinkedIn. I do a video and I do the audio version of it. And I just literally through the month, I kind of pick the marketing campaigns that have stood out for me. And then I give my perspective on it. I go, this is what it is, and here's what I think. I could be wrong, but it's my perspective, and that's okay, right? I think that's the other thing as well is, you have a perspective, and when you find your voice, then your perspective is yours. And that's, perfectly okay in a personal brand.
Maria, you've in your profile, we learned that you do an awful lot in the insurance side of things.
Yes.
Is there anything you would do from a thought leadership space, from a recruitment point of view, in that to try and render yourself the recruiter of choice in that sector?
Well, practically, we're the corporate partners with Brokers Ireland. So we're constantly talking to insurance brokers. We send out a newsletter to them every second week through brokers. We've also had opportunities to speak at brokers forums. So we did that as well earlier on this year. And then we go to their Meet the Market Day as well. They're all practical in-person items that we do. But then it's about thinking of the candidates. What are they doing? In insurance, there's very specific exams that have to be done in order to be able to progress. So we're reaching out to those because the exams happen at specific times. So at specific times then throughout the year, we're concentrating our posts on those people who are now getting their exam results. So they now will be looking for either more money or the next step up. And we want to attract those candidates. So we really focus our posts in on attracting those people at particular times. So that's the strategy that we use.
How far in advance would you plan your campaign? Like, how far in advance would you plan your diaries? Would you know
insurance,
that? Yeah.
We're able to plan our campaign about 3 months in advance in insurance because it's so specific and the dates are set. So we're able to really prepare very well. In other areas, you might be planning the day before.
Fair enough. And I think one of the things that came across again in this, Emer, is authenticity. You need to be able to align yourself with something that's genuine to yourself. How do you decide what's a compelling event that you'd like to associate or promote or highlight from a marketing point of view?
I suppose, I mean, it's listening to your network, you know, what are people talking about? And then I suppose looking at what's your slant, what can you kind of put on that? I mean, I think we talked about already, anything personal. I suppose there's certain things that I've had success with, which have been related to maybe mums returning to work, because that's who I am, and that works well. But it is something I'm genuinely very passionate about, the balance and the struggle. The other piece that works really well, and I think no matter what desk you're on or what you're doing, if you give a really good service, like if you're really good at your job, you're placing candidates, you're filling jobs for clients, ensure you're getting testimonials and referrals from them. Like that sort of stuff is fantastic for your brand to have it shared. And I think when you've that sort of stuff published, people then see, oh, you know, you are an expert in this. So I think that's a real good tip as well.
So don't be afraid to ask for a testimonial, and then don't be afraid to put it up online across all your social channels.
All your social channels, your website, everywhere to share it.
Always showcase your results.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've got an interesting question in. Would you recommend that you accept every single LinkedIn request that comes into you, or would you be a little bit more selective to try and build up a majority network of professionals in that specific sector? So I might throw that one over to you first, Maria.
Well, I don't accept every single request that comes into me. I don't. I mean, I'm a recruiter, so I'm interested in talking to people that I can potentially work with or place. So yes, the requests that come in, and there's many of them. I guess if they're like, for example, I would get an awful lot of people who are sending requests to me and they're IT professionals or they're working in engineering and completely obscure areas. What I'll normally do is I'll say to them, look, I'm of no use to you. If you have a look out for an engineering recruiter, you'd be best connecting with them. That's what I normally do. I don't completely ignore everybody, but I don't accept everything, no.
Emer?
I think there's a bit of a balance there. I do tend to, if I get connection requests, I accept the majority of them. I guess I do find I get a lot of them, so it's very hard to sift through every one. And I suppose the hungry recruiter in me is always wondering, you know, oh, they might be a connection, or there might be something, you know, they might have a marketing qualification. I don't know, you know, when you see the tiny thing of who they are. And then I suppose it's just really filtering through the questions that come into you from people once you're connected to them.
No, fair enough. Connor, have you anything on that?
Yeah, look, I think I probably accept most requests that come in. Certainly, as someone who's looking for work, I definitely accept most in the hope that something's going to come out of it. But it's yeah, like that. I think then quickly, you know, like if there's a 3 kind of emails or in-mail follow-up where they're trying to sell you something, like I'm gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard though.
No worries. Differentiation. It's something that we all come up against on a day-to-day basis. Often, you're not only trying to differentiate yourself in your market, you're trying to differentiate yourself in your firm. Connor, what tips would you have, or what are the common challenges that people have when trying to differentiate themselves and their brand, and how can you overcome them?
Yeah, look, I mean, differentiation is one of the hardest things, right? Because you have to really have a unique proposition, and kind of really something that is different. So I think it is finding your kind of specific expertise or experience, and having that as kind of your differentiation. So I mean, I think even your kind of example earlier on of kind of moving into marketing recruitment is great, because you have your expertise as a recruiter. Everyone on this call has that expertise as a recruiter. It was then how you found that niche within the marketing world to kind of have your voice. And so I think that's kind of really being specific, and it's actually where you have to tie it in with distinctiveness. You have to find the two have to be a balance, because differentiation can be a lot harder. So being distinctive in, it could be your tone of voice, it could be the style, it could be how you show up, it could be that you're always doing video and that's your distinctiveness, because that's allows you kind of show up differently. So it's finding the balance between the two, because it's differentiation genuinely can be the harder of the two. But I think that's really just leaning into kind of the passion and the expertise that you have.
Maria and Emer, I throw this open to both of you. Have you got a list of social channels or of social content media that you encourage your recruiters to use? So, for example, are some of your colleagues more comfortable with video, as Connor alluded to? Are some more comfortable on Twitter? Are some only LinkedIn? And how do you encourage people to find their own voice in each of those?
So I suppose we predominantly use LinkedIn across the group from a channel perspective. We find that works really, really well. And it's a mix of video, it's imagery, it's I suppose depending on what works. Video does work very well. I think if you're telling a little bit of a background of a story of a role, we would often find as well, maybe if we're partnering exclusively with the company, it's a great added selling tool to the client that, listen, we can do a video. We can, in some instances, we've actually interviewed the line manager, a real brief snippet of, what's the job like. So it's actually bringing the job spec to life. That works. I think that those sort of things work well for video. But outside of that, probably any kind of imagery and just short, sweet, snappy posts work, I think, best for us. And it's predominantly LinkedIn we would use.
Maria?
Yeah, it's similar. It's predominantly LinkedIn that my team would use as well. They use polls as well. So they might put out a poll there asking people if they're thinking of making a move this year, and they'd get their responses back. And what the team would do then is make contact with everybody who interacted with them in the poll, and we generate candidates that way.
Brilliant. You've mentioned as well, Maria, that you're quite conscious, or so you have a different style in terms of Instagram and on LinkedIn. One of the questions that has come in there is how do we feel? How do you guys feel about more personal postings on LinkedIn and posts that might look more at home on Instagram? Do you think that there's a right post for LinkedIn and a right post for Instagram? Or I'd love to get your input on that.
I think people are becoming a bit more personable on LinkedIn as opposed to when it started off and it was just the professional network. Again, it brings it back to what we talked about earlier about being real and being authentic. Definitely there are some posts that you would put out on Instagram where you're, I don't know, enjoying the beach or something, and that is not necessarily to be on LinkedIn. However, when you are being out there, you want to showcase who you are as a person as well as a recruiter. So I think that there is a place for some personal type posts on LinkedIn, but then there is Instagram is mostly just about me.
Brilliant. Emer, another question just came in. It's a great question. I think it's tailor-made for you. Okay. What advice would you give someone who is new to the industry and might not be as established as others? How would you build your personal brand when having recently joined the industry?
So literally start from the start. It's a great place to be. It's really exciting. Congratulations for joining a fabulous industry is how I'd start that one. Listen, define your niche, figure out what it is you're doing, I suppose. Build out and optimize your LinkedIn profile. They're all really simple things you can do to start. And then kind of back to Connor's point, start commenting on posts, start building up kind of your traction there, and really build your online presence. Look, and don't forget about kind of the more in-person networking events as well. You know, get out to events. A great tip is, if you're out an event, also share that online at the start of the event, because if somebody else is on LinkedIn during the event, they might go, oh, that's that person, and actually make that personal connection at the occasion as well. And I suppose really it's kind of back to, you know, good storytelling, try and come up with some good ideas on different things you can share. But then really do provide that good service and ensure that your candidates are giving you the testimonials at the end of it. And I suppose back to Connor's point in terms of differentiation, that takes serious time. Like, we are all recruiters, we are doing a very similar task. It is going to take you time to kind of completely differentiate from your competitors. But it's just trial and error. I don't think any of us are experts as of yet.
No, and I think that's one thing oh, sorry, Connor.
No, I was going to add, because I saw that question as well. And I was like, actually, it's really interesting perspective that somebody new to the industry, like, that's the story. I'm like, that's really interesting. Like, to follow the newness, you know, your journey and your newness and the things that you're discovering as a recruiter is what could be a really fascinating personal branding story, and kind of the advice you're getting, because you're, as Emer said, you're at an event, you meet somebody, the advice they might give you, you know, you might feel comfortable doing stuff to camera with them, that's, you know, talk about the successes you're having, the challenges. Like, there's a fascinating story there. I'm like, yeah, I'm following.
Yeah, I know. It actually prompted me to think, because I know authenticity is important in developing your personal brand and differentiation, but there's nothing wrong with looking and seeing what other people are doing as well and tailoring it to yourself. And I know there's one or two of our competitors did a great job over the last couple of years about documenting the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months in our industry. And I was really impressed with that when I saw it, and I was invested. And I've been around the block a couple of times. So that's cool. There was another question there just about the automation software. Actually, it's just somebody going down. Somebody just clarifying with regards to automation and AI. How does that kind of figure out, or how do you square that circle in terms of authenticity? If AI and ChatGPT are coming up with the content for you, how can you tailor it for yourself? I might throw that to you first, Maria.
Well, kind of as I said earlier, when we're looking for some content, you'll throw it out to ChatGPT, for example, and it comes back with topics for you to discuss. But then it's to go down through that and to see what resonates with me, because I'm not going to just throw out text for the sake of putting out content. It's about what's interesting, what do I think is going to be interesting to my network as well. But it has to be my voice. So it's not about copying and pasting. You go down through it, you read through it, and then you put it into your own voice. And it could be like what Connor was saying earlier, it's your opinion in relation to what the topic is about, as opposed to just throwing copy and pasting.
Brilliant. Emer, you mentioned something earlier on there about optimizing your LinkedIn profile and how that's aligned then with the social selling. I know we've done different sessions on LinkedIn, but what does that mean, the optimizing your LinkedIn profile? Could you explain that to me, please?
Yeah, so I think it's just ensuring that you have all of the basic stuff really filled in correctly. You know, you've got a professional photograph, you've got your job title is correct, specifically specifying what you are doing or what you're recruiting for, that you've got your profile summary filled in. So it's just to ensure you've got all your work history there, the colleges or universities or schools you attended, and kind of ensure that you have the whole profile filled in. You know, if you're going to start sharing yourself, that's kind of the shop front, I suppose. So it needs to look good. So that would be the first thing to do.
Brilliant. Maria, have you anything to add to that with regards to getting your LinkedIn profile up and running?
When you're building your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn will also tell you how far along you are in the process.
Yep.
So when you get it all completed, you're the all-star. But it is really important, and you have to make sure that you put the keywords into your summary as well. That will help people to find you as a recruiter if they're putting some search words into their own search.
And is there any other aspects of social selling that we've not touched on yet, Emer, that you think is very relevant for the audience?
No, I think it's just really being very aware of what it is. I think you could probably do a whole other webinar in terms of what it is and kind of all of that. Depending on who you ask, there's sort of 3 C's or 5 C's or 6 C's of social selling. I know our MD Gareth bangs on about it all the time, but it's all about, I think it's credibility, connections, content, consistency, congruency, I think is another word in there. But I think it's back to what we're saying. It's consistently posting really good content. And I think the piece about social selling then is actually looking at the conversions of that. So looking at the metrics, what's working, what's not working, and what's working, do more of it and keep going, I suppose.
From a non-recruitment background, Connor, is there anything that you think recruiters do really well from a social selling point of view? And conversely, is there anything that we do pretty average that you think we could make some quick wins by just adjusting a small bit?
That's a great question.
Well, finally, 950.
Yeah,
I got one out.
It's terrible. No. I think, and actually you mentioned Gareth there, when I follow Gareth, I think, his content is really, really strong. It has a perspective, it has a strong voice. And so I think, I think it goes back to that. It is kind of what's the strong perspective that you have on something. What's the voice? It's the value that you add. And I think, Maria, you mentioned just all the job postings isn't the value add that people want anymore. It's beyond that. It's the, is it the tips? Is it the advice? Is it the, we just did this, and so this could be valuable to you. And it's, it really is. And I think you mentioned consistency, Emer. I also think curiosity is a key part of personal brand building. What are things that you're curious in, and how can they help people who are curious in the same topics, right? And it can be different. Like it's important to be as wide reach as possible within the segment that you're in, right? And thinking about that reach, and that's curiosity is going to get you that reach.
It's all fantastic in theory to develop this and really amplify our message across there. But the real world practicality of it, Maria, you shared with us a story that we can't finish up without ending up on, about how a client contacted you. Do you want to share that with our audience here as well? Because I just think it's where the rubber meets the road. It's where the results come from. It's really a summation of everything.
So as part of what I put out online, I'm often talking about the company that I work for, FRS Recruitment, and their values and our culture and how great they are to work with them and what they do as a company. So it's constantly a message I put out there, because we're always going to be attracting or trying to attract staff as we continue to build. But what happened was it was picked up, my message that was going out was picked up by a talent acquisition manager who reached out to me because she was looking for a new recruitment partner. And basically she wanted to work with a company that had similar values to her own company, and she thought that there would be synergies between the two. So we ended up having a really good discussion and becoming recruitment partners.
Fantastic. So again, genuine authenticity, consistency across different social platforms, and the results came. And we're nearly going to be at the stage where we're rounding up with our top takeaways, but there's one other question there. Just any advice on how you market your services to potential new clients? So I presume that means employers or hiring managers. Is there anything beyond what we've touched on today that you'd recommend to promote your organization services or recruitment services? Emer, can I throw that one to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. I think, you talk about B2B and B2C selling. I think B2B has become much more, I suppose, consumer orientated. I think you keep it simple and straight when you're talking to clients in the same way you would candidates. But the social selling, the personal brand works for the clients as well, if you're making sure that you're connected and following, the client companies maybe that you're targeting. Similar to Maria, we have lots of evidence around clients who have reached out to us. Maybe we're pitching a particular role. So I use the example of maybe doing a video with a client on a particular role for their organization. Company B, their competitor, sees that, straight away they're onto us. We have something similar. How do we do that? So I suppose it's just showcasing your expertise, but making sure that you've connected with the right individuals as well, so that they can see that subliminally, I suppose, all the time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And do you do much work on personas when you start in a campaign? Do you get that prescriptive on where your people hang out online, who your target is, or did that more happen organically? Emer?
For us, it's probably more organically. I mean, I think the marketing team would look at that. I mean, that's definitely above my pay grade when it comes to what I'm doing on a personal level. I think as an organization and from an employer brand perspective, it's definitely something that needs to be part of I suppose a broader company branding exercise. But I think on a personal level, for me at the moment anyway, it's really just trying to work with what's coming in and what's sort of in front of me at the time.
Connor, have you anything to add to that, or would you recommend if someone is starting to day one of their journey with their personal brand, would you begin with the end in mind, identify who you want to target, or would you just let it go organically and be your own genuine self?
Be more organic. I've seen persona work just being absolutely disaster, because you end up with this, ideal person and they don't exist. So I think you're better off thinking about the kind of more broad reach, and kind of your niche will find you in a way, because you're going to be talking about things that will be of interest to people because they share the same passion and curiosity that you do.
Fantastic. Before we, sorry, Maria.
No, I'm just going to say the same thing. It was another example. I was looking for a sales director, and I went out to market not looking for that person, but actually giving advice to people that at that level in relation to people who might be looking for work. And then I ended up getting people coming and asking me for advice, and I found the candidate that way. So it's just about going out there again and being authentic.
We are just down to our last little takeaway before I go around. So I just want to just call out for any last questions to our expert audience. It's been a phenomenally fast hour. And I've taken an awful lot from it, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it when we finish up this. So just last questions are around if anyone's gotten anything in. If not, can I just ask, Connor, I'll start off with yourself. We gave you the first word. What would be your key takeaways to people? So generally, I think the majority of people at the start, we went back to our poll, are very raw in this journey. They're very new in this journey. What would be your top tips to we who are very new in this journey to do straight after this call?
Top tip, I think, would be just to do one thing each day and make a start, one small thing. And that could be as simple as commenting or reposting something from somebody else and adding could be one line perspective on it. I think that alone will then start the journey, because we've said it's a long path, right? This isn't about, you're not going to build your brand in a month. So I think just take one step, and if you do it consistently every day, you'd be surprised in 6 months where you're at.
Fantastic. Emer?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to top that, but I think if you're like me, it's probably maybe something you're not comfortable in. And similar to what I said to my daughter when she was heading off to school this morning, just being brave, push yourself out there and do it. Our job is still filling jobs at the end of the day, but I think if you do this, it will actually start to add value by reaching extra candidates, extra clients, and it might only be 5% to start with, but very quickly it'll grow from there.
Fantastic. And Maria?
On a practical level,
don't
just post job after job after job after job. You'll get no traction. Keep an eye on your activity levels on your LinkedIn profile. If you see you've got 2 or 3 jobs, then you definitely need to be posting something else.
I'm frantically deleting all the jobs that I've been sharing on LinkedIn as we go along. But that is fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been a really, really, really fascinating hour, and I really appreciate it. You've democratized it in a certain way. You've removed a lot of the scariness about it, and it's just doing basically different activities from day one that we're all comfortable with. Before we finish up, I want to thank again our team at ContractingPLUS for sponsoring this year's breakfast briefings. Again, if you're working with contractors, make sure you're chatting to ContractingPLUS, and they'll have them on your partner list for umbrella and limited companies. We have another couple of events that are scheduled for the rest of this year. We're going to have another breakfast briefing in September and in October, and I think another one in November as well. So we've got some great content, some great topics there. But as always, the Federation are there to serve you. So if you have any interest, any topics that you feel you'd like to see covered in these breakfast briefing fora, it's a fantastic opportunity. And I'm really, really grateful to Maria, to Emer and Connor for sharing their time today. But to be able to tap into that network is fantastic. So please feel free to share that directly with the ERF, and they can put out the call to us. But apart from that, thank you very much, everybody, for a great morning. I'll leave you back to it. And look at this, 30 seconds early. Anna, I've done it. Have a great day. Thanks everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll see you at the next breakfast briefing.
Thanks, Dave.